Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the DP Labs channel. Today's video will be a lesson on scraping, lesson number 2 from Mikhail. Alright, shall we get started? So hello Mikhail, people really liked it. Well then, let's continue as our subscribers requested. Let's finish up the remaining questions about the paint that came up in the comments section, and maybe you can share something else interesting on this topic.
Yes, there's a question about the paint. Blue-eyed, red-nosed ones. Someone might say that the bluing effect, the particular size of the paint particles and so on, actually, there is an objective way to check. If there is a freshly scraped, completely clean surface, I can carefully wipe it with a suitable solvent. It's just really clean, absolutely spotless, scraped smooth, but there are still some small marks and imperfections on it. I even made a short about this. It's part number 5. I take the pink paint.
A red one.
The red one, yes.
A thick layer, right?
It's actually quite thin, specifically chosen so that the spots are visible. So I just apply it and we can see the spots. Still a bit too thick, the halos are pretty big, you see?
From the cameras, yes, you can see it like this.
Yeah.
It's clearer to the naked eye, though the light is bright, you can still see it.
Maybe, yeah, it's something with the lighting, but you can see it from this side. You can't see it on the metal, but in reality there's blue there. Not from here, but I dug into the tube and managed to open the blue one. It suffered. Berlin blue glaze, blue and so on. It doesn't matter, the effect will be the same. Here it is applied. You can see the surface of this cube and I'm rubbing it. It even sticks a bit.
And here's what we get. With my own eyes, gentlemen, I see some kind of gray dirt. You can look at it from different angles, but
we see the same thing. There's a halo here, the halo is here, and they're different. The spot is almost invisible here, but here it's a bit more noticeable.
it blends in a lot. Now let's try from a different angle.
If you compare the photos, I tried to include them, the distribution of the spots is identical, meaning the layer of paint is very similar, but it's very hard to see this dirt with the naked eye.
Here it seems like there's one big round spot, but in reality there are 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, yeah. And
that's why with the blue paint, it's very hard to see fine scraping, but with the red rose, with this one, you can still see it, and you can even scrape a bit deeper there. But there's an even cooler method. But why is that anyway? Why 20 to 25 points and similar requirements? They weren't created for no reason. 20 to 25 points are specified so that in reality, you'll have actual contact. If you have 20 to 25 paint spots, with that thin pink paint, you'll only have about 5 real contact spots. There won't even be 10.
But why is that?
Well, that's just how it is. It's a kind of paint deception because the paint doesn't actually show the contact spot. It shows a spot above the actual contact. I can draw it on the board, but in reality, the paint marks around the spot,
It clings and then falls off, or something like that. You see,
you have this really thick layer of paint here with pronounced peaks sticking out. And the peak gets pressed in. And the very tip itself. You don't actually see that shine, but rather the paint that has worn off that peak.
but when you look closely, everything becomes clear.
You need to smear it around, and in reality you have just a few contact spots, about 5 to 7 no more. Scraping by the shine is very difficult because that's where subjectivity comes in. Sometimes you see those reflections, sometimes you don't. There's a completely different method for this. I discovered it myself, since for some reason it's not written anywhere in the literature. I'll show you. Where did you discover it then? In the secret writings of the Sumerians or what? When I was trying to figure out what scraping is and why it's done that way in Sumerian times. Why by the shine, and why does no one scrape by the shine?
What does it mean to scrape by the shine? When you see it yourself?
Yes, you now take the plate.
Well, that sounds kind of complicated.
Well, the standard is scraping by the shine. For example, you can try it yourself. You take the plate and now we'll see some dark smudges starting to appear. You can actually see them right here quite clearly if you look closely.
Looks like dirt.
Dirt! It's the same here. There's a halo there. Here is a large contact spot. Here are the spots. They look similar. And this is without anything? This is without anything, yes. It's just that I wiped it, the dirt, rubbed it, and polished the mating surface. But this is aluminum, you can still do things like that with it. But with steel, it almost never works. How do the Americans do it? It's a clever trick. They paint one part either dark, black, or blue, and the other with orange paint. 2 parts. When you match them together, with thin layers, the contact spots are really easy to see. They end up with closer to 10 actual contact points. The paint,
if you heat it, it fuses.
There's something like that. I'm honestly not a big fan of this particular method. I have tried it before, but we can also use Bellina titanium. And let's now then Even use a lot of them, sometimes even more than you might expect. Well, that's a bit too much, so I'll just take it down to 2, which means we need an intermediate surface to roll it out on. And here, in this particular place, there are, well, actually quite a lot of them here, as you can see.
Here, nothing with the redness.
Both. And the point here is that you can remove the excess. Well, there was still a lot left on the roller. The paint should leave a mark on the surface. This one, as you can see, we can just make it so it doesn't... Well, the layer is even a bit too thick. I should wipe off the roller.
Come on, let's wipe everything with this. And
I'll just gather it back up now. Let me do that.
okay, sure then.
I've removed the roller and from here too.
All right, we're marking the surface.
To keep it from shining, we need to create a matte effect. Now it's all kind of grayish.
Ah, I didn't really see anything.
On aluminum, it's honestly not that great, but on steel, the effect will actually be really nice and truly quite impressive indeed. This is clean. There's nothing on it at all. We touch it, and you can see.
So why is it so great? And
The shiny spots are the areas that are close to actual contact. The layer is a bit too thick.
if you look in the morning, I don't know, gentlemen, if you can see it at all. But if you look at it from this angle, that's where the shine comes from.
Because the layer is a bit too thick. Actually, you need to reduce it by 3 times and then we'll see very few contact spots. But the aluminum has already worn against itself on the table. We just got lazy about scraping for the examples, but it's a labor-intensive process. Or maybe it's nothing, you just bounce around a bit and it's done quickly. Now I'll make the layer even thinner. The important thing is that you...
Paint it over?
Yes, exactly. You need to remove these halos and you create a white background, kind of grayish, so that...
Grayish, and the parts that are worn in become shiny. Yes?
Yes, that the reflection from there doesn't shine back at you. And here they are. Here we go. Here's a proper layer. Here are our 2 halos that we saw. And now we can see the actual contact points.
And here are some more of these points, such as, for example, in particular, and
They are visible to the naked eye. The camera has its own environment, filters, smart systems, and so on.
but with your eyes pressed down. And you can see it, that's how it turns out, on the grey and on the white paint on the grey.
That's great. It's only needed so that the bottom surface doesn't shine directly into your eyes, you see, and now you can actually see the real shine in its place, as intended. Why am I telling you this? Why is this even necessary? When you want to achieve a really great surface, you have to use extremely thin layers of paint, and you won't even be able to see them. You'll have to look closely, you'll need to set up light sources in such a way that you can catch the reflections. You switch to this method and that's it, everything becomes visible to you. Take a scraper and you'll get a perfect result.
But where is this actually needed? Is this for lapping some kind of KMDSHKA?
In general, well,
You don't need to lap a KMDSHKA or direct it, but you won't do it like that for everyone.
by the way, as strange as it may sound, it's not about the number of spots you get, right? A lot if the surface is very steep. You don't have to strain your eyes trying to distinguish the pink color. If it's hard for you, I don't know, maybe your lighting is bad, then you just switch to white. It's not any harder, not any longer, nothing like that at all. You just gently smear the part and you don't even need to wipe off this paint. When you carefully scrape it, you remove these things, then go over it with a stone to finish. And you just spread this grime around with a roller. The grayness. And you don't worry, you just keep working. In other words, the amount of work doesn't increase. The result gets better and easier. It's simply to make the scraper's life easier.
In short, a scraper should have that little bit of red paint, whatever it's called.
What's it called? Let me think.
Crimson, red, crimson, and titanium white.
Yeah, so it looks like this now. As you can see, it's turned gray again. I'll take a roller, and you can even do it without using a tray if you want. I didn't pick up any dirt at all. And just spread it evenly so that it covers the surface nicely.
To remove the shine,
To remove the shine, I'll wipe this thing off.
it picked up a little bit of paint just so that it's not greasy and doesn't stick. A little over 3.
See, it even soaks into those spots where the scraping removed the contact layer,
Yeah.
and keep on scraping. Only the quality will just improve, the labor intensity doesn't increase.
But you mostly go over the red.
That's enough for now. They're still running in wear on machines anyway. Well, let's put it this way. What is running in wear? It's when the guides are ground in most cases. Here's a great example. Our Armenian machine tool. Its factory guides are ground, so much so that you could sharpen your nails across them. And they drew the wheel very roughly. This is due to wheel wear, and so on. You can talk to a real gritty machinist there, There are real chip makers there, guys who really understand and know their stuff. In any case, grinding always leaves sharpening marks from the stone. And when your machine wears out, the mating part, the soft one, it settles just a little, down to 1/100 of a millimeter, but your contact patches improve, everything gets better. It seems during operation, where during operation is normal. For Class A and C machines, there is such a concept that typically, about 6 months after repair or commissioning, a control scraping procedure is performed.
I see.
Well, that's machines that are like at the level of a measuring machine or C, but master machines are optics and similar ones like grinding machines. Well, something like that.
All right, so we're done with painting. I hope everything is clear to everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. What shall we move on to now?
About those shorts I filmed, we'll attach them somewhere appropriate so you can find them easily. I want to talk about how to... I think about how to scrape properly next. This is so I remember that the surface is number 5 for myself. How to do it correctly and why it's important to start scraping the right way. Some books specifically mention this. You should start from the point where, well, I no longer have any bad edges, where the marks from the previous processing step are, right? They need to be removed. I recorded 2 videos, they're a bit different, but both can be suggested. What's the point? When you start scraping,
Wait. All right, let's start. Yes, now we're getting to it. Finally, to the scraping itself. Yes, to the...
actual data scraping.
Yes. Well, tell us about the scraper. What kinds are there and what are they for?
Well, listen, there are actually a lot of different types. Some people like to use old Soviet records. This is a scraper from the Rostov guys. Really? Is it theirs? Yes. It's actually quite a handy thing. I like the long one because we scrape towards ourselves. It should rest on your shoulder. That's why a long scraper is good. We even extended it further. If you're not scraping towards yourself, then shorter scrapers are probably more convenient. It's easier for me to solder plates than to use ones like these, because if you're working in a dovetail joint, this particular scraper might not be able to reach all the way in, or you're forced to always hold a long, heavy plate. It's actually very thick. But soldered scrapers don't have that problem.
And plates are sold nowadays, right? Or are they from something else?
Plates are even sold on ozone now. I think it's actually from Rostov. Pochani sells them. Here, I solder an ordinary square plate. It's
actually a file, isn't it?
Yes, it's very convenient.
Did you make it yourself? Or with what? With brass?
With brass, yes. Well, not with phosphor, not with brass. There's even a scraper like this, made exactly the same way from a file.
Is it just a plate that's soldered on a plate? And did you sharpen it yourself, or...?
How? Yes, I sharpened it myself on a diamond wheel, about the diamond grit size. Actually, there's not much difference. Well, let's put it this way. With a fine grit, you would typically use around 10 units or so. Maybe it's cool. But honestly, I've been using the same wheel with a grit size of 100 to 125 for about 15 years now.
And that's enough?
Enough?
Is it still in good shape? Is it durable at all?
Well, it used to be there. It had a 6mm thick layer, but now it's about 4mm thick. That's still enough for me in any situation. I actually even made a special jig specifically to sharpen it at angles for you, with radii and all that. I'll film it and show the difference, but that's something I've prepared separately.
Well, all right, we'll show the sharpening process. And is it enough for long sharpening sessions for tool steel?
That really depends on your individual strength and the amount of effort you put in. The edge of the blade dulls quite noticeably on steel. It even dulls on aluminum.
So how much a square meter you scrape?
And here it depends on your physical strength and fatigue. I hand over the scraper not when it gets dull, but when I feel uncomfortable. What do you mean by uncomfortable? I want to make a short stroke, but it ends up being long because the scraper jumps. And when it gets a bit dull, my stroke gets even longer because I have to push it harder. At that point, I just go and touch up the edge a bit. The scraper. Regarding scraping, what kinds there are and why I insist on scraping towards myself. And in general, I recommend scraping with a lift-off motion. Why is this good? There are people who scrape like this in most videos because it's the simplest way. Everyone scrapes like this, just pushing straight ahead. Some say that the back edge of the scraper will wear out that way, but in reality it still happens very quickly anyway. But when we look at the results of scraping, and this really needs to be shown on the results, you'll see that your surface will be too flat. That's not always a good thing. I recommend everyone scrape with a lift-off motion. That is, as I move, I lift the scraper and I get individual marks.
So on the return stroke, you don't drag it back?
I try not to drag it back. It's just a matter of habit. Actually, it's better to use a thinner scraper so it flexes under you, because here we ended up with a thick file when we were working. And when scraping towards yourself, you
rest it on your
shoulder, and actually it's very controlled and very easy to do. You just take it and gently scrape, and honestly it's really not that labor intensive at all.
You move with your body, right?
Well, mostly with my shoulder. I help with my body, and I have a controlled stroke length, so it's very easy to hit the mark. I can calmly aim.
Well, you need one that's this long. Well, just take...
Any stick will do, and you can easily extend it here with a wooden stick. Even if it creaks a little bit, it's really no big deal. You'll figure out what works best for you. When scraping towards yourself, success is always guaranteed. You will have good, proper scraping. Regarding... Some people, even I, tried to make an example. Here's what it looks like, to understand what proper scraping is and what improper scraping is. And why you shouldn't do it that way. It's interesting. I wonder if the camera shows that it's been scraped with long strokes. With these kinds of strokes, specifically scraped with long strokes. This surface, just like everyone does. Well, let me just show it again for you. Once more, as you can see, it looks like this right here.
But here you go in that direction?
Always crosswise. By the way, scraping must always be
Crosswise. Now we'll explain how this kind of scraping actually starts.
This kind of scraping, it's technically normal. Now, I'll explain the nuance of these long passes and why they're not good. The chip, as you can see, is quite thick. Here, I'll also go deep towards myself. I don't mind this thing. Give it to me. Let me just turn it more easily. Send it over there. Deep, as everyone says, but how deep will the scraping be? Right here, it'll definitely be 1/100 of a millimeter. In any of the passes. So, we wiped with the red, and we have a pinkish color left. Now I'll wash and wipe the roller to clean off the dirt, not so much the lead, but this grime, and then I'll work with the red paint. I'll explain in a moment why this isn't ideal, but the result meets the GOST standard and the basic requirement, if you only pay attention to the thickness. And the number of spots. The layer became thicker than what we showed on that plate at the start of the video, but it did objectively get thicker. There are spots, and quite a lot of them.
Yes, we can very clearly see the spots. So what exactly is wrong here?
What's wrong with this result? We have spots here on the surface. If I now take a wide scraper and go over it like this, you'll see that I end up with huge halos. This happens because the scraper moves across the spots and spreads the material unevenly, which makes these large halos appear. Why do you think this happens? Because these lines are quite deep, and I don't have a single point of contact, but rather, how should I put it? I had this kind of halo effect, this sort of glowing area, and I just chopped it up with deep scraping, breaking it down into smaller sections. Formally, I get the same 10 to 15 spots per square inch if you mark it off carefully and precisely. Let's actually count the spots together, one by one, to see exactly how many there are in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Well, let's say 15. That's what we'll get here. Normal good spots. But they're artificial because my layer of paint is very thick. If I switch to a normal layer of paint, reduce it by 3 times, then I'll hardly have any spots at all. Well, let me try. Yeah, right now, yeah. Here it is, our paint. Give me half. I'll wipe off half of it now. I think it needs to be 3 times less here. Well, let's do half now and see what happens with half, and then we'll see. I have other surfaces that are well sanded. We can use them to determine the appropriate layer thickness, such as the correct one.
Think to polish.
Well, maybe. Let's just go ahead and apply it right now, and then we'll see the result. Well, here are the spots. There really aren't any. Maybe the eraser touched it somewhere. No, but these are scratches. I see them. He went over the scratches lightly. Here they are. They've darkened.
They were quite noticeable. They went along the surface.
Yeah, and now they're gone. But I can feel it with my hands. You can really tell when the stone catches on a scratch. I'm not pressing on it, I'm just gently removing it. I roll it out carefully, without adding new paint. See how there are fewer and fewer spots, and this layer is still actually quite thick. So
these indentations are really deep. Yes.
And that allows me to use an incredibly thick layer of paint, which would normally be unacceptable, but still end up with only about 20 spots. Well, not 20, let's say 10 to 15 spots on a very thick layer of paint. That's what I'll get. Because I just made really deep grooves where the paint simply can't reach. Those grooves will be about 30 to 40 microns deep.
Oh, I see.
And when you see... Well, in many YouTube videos, when people really press the scraper down and do all that stuff, this is the kind of problem you get. You actually get a lot of spots, but the layer is quite thick.
The height of these, well, roughly speaking...
Currently in progress. Please wait. Thank you for your patience.
Is very deep. Maybe...
To make it visible, I would have to really zoom in there. This layer of paint is still thick. If you take it as...
Then it would be even less.
But if you take a decent surface, where I have, say, a 2 or a 3 on the Dewey scale, when I had a good one, I could wipe off this marker. This surface has been sanded very well to really attract attention, but for me personally, a 5 or a 6 would be good to do. 6 for sure is definitely done well. I even have a video about it.
It looks so beautiful, doesn't it?
It's a different kind of scraping. Yes, with a lift-off, it will look similar. When you scrape with a lift-off, it will consistently look just like this every time.
Yes, it shines beautifully. Well, let's hit it with this layer. Bam!
Just hit it with this layer right here. I got some dirt on it because the vise is dirty.
It got messed up?
Yeah, no, right now we're just rubbing the stone with aluminum. That's all we're doing, actually. Well, I was clamping it and something got on it from the vise, just to clarify. There's debris from the vise, since it's a drill vise and I don't scrape in the vise. The drill vise had some old paint and small fragments of debris stuck to its surface. It looked like it had not been cleaned recently.
Little bits of debris, those are like the children of trash.
You could even call them pooplets. Pooplets are a thing.
A very dangerous thing. So, gentlemen, look, this layer right here shows up completely differently. As you can clearly see, spots, 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 spots.
This is the correct layer. Here, there are about 15 to 20 spots. Here you can see there are these noticeably brighter areas in this area. There's still something lying here. And here is a very bright spot, already a stain.
It was here. Yeah, some kind of dirt. Well, let's look at this part here. Like this, if you stand like that, it won't work.
If you stand like that, it won't work. But on the other hand, you can throw on an awesome thick layer of paint and everything will look great. And if your layer here covers everything up, then yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, if we roast it right here, I'll definitely take it, since I already have it over there. Yeah, now I'll show you. Over there it'll be fine, but here there will be full contact, just so you know.
It even looks nicer. No,
not yet, but here at the tip, the roller isn't picking up any more paint. It's not really getting any thicker at all.
It'll pop. Go ahead, call. Well, it's smearing.
It's smearing. And over there the spots will appear differently. No, there's a lot of gunk. Somehow there's still gunk left here.
Maybe wipe it off.
No new spots will appear at this time currently.
Well, now there are even more.
Well, there are more spots, yeah, but that gunk is gone. There's still some left somewhere. Maybe it's on the tile. We're not aiming for that. The point here is that if you cheat incorrectly, let's say, by using a scraper with a very large radius, you can get 25 on greasy layers, but those aren't honest results because of the greasy layer. Because this layer is on the verge of being unacceptable, since my spots have already merged into single halos. That's not good anymore. The layer should be twice as thin.
Well, yes, just like we showed on that layer. And on the previous one, on this deeply scraped surface, you won't see any spots there.
Yes, you just can't see any spots there, so
don't overwork it.
right? Yes, not just don't overwork it, but don't aim for small radii. Well, it's a shame to ruin this surface. But this little scraper, I don't mind ruining it. I sharpened it with a very small radius. I don't know, maybe the radius is about 20 millimeters or so. You have to understand you can scrape here with it. I use it like this, as long as I have... This is the surface here. You can also carefully scrape here with it, but only with very small, gentle movements, removing specific spots, for example, if needed. The ones I don't really like. Here this works for spots, small ones and so on. We're aiming for 30 spots there. With large radii, it's impossible to catch up to them. And in the same way, the scraper doesn't really require any special effort. The size of the scraper doesn't particularly matter or affect much. When you need a ton of spots, it's more convenient to work with a small scraper like this, and it's very important. When you start working, when you start scraping at the very beginning, you scrape at the pace you need. And then the spots will keep appearing at roughly the same frequency as when you first started scraping in the very first passes. You're basically creating them yourself. I don't even really aim for the spots. I just go at the pace that works for me. And they'll start to disappear and the surface quality will improve just with the right step, the way I got used to doing it from the very beginning. Well, I skip over the completely white spots. That's basically it. I don't even specifically aim for myself, I just move forward in a straight line, maybe deviating just a little bit here and there along the way. The result will always be good, but it's very important, especially at the very beginning, to start crosswise, to confidently and deliberately scrape your surface so that any previous marks or traces don't get in the way.
So let's try it now on one of the surfaces, the one that's the most uneven, and show a couple of passes. In your opinion, on this cube, is it really worth doing it this way, let's say, for complete beginners?
It would be really, truly very...
Like this. Gentlemen, we've taken a surface, and now we're moving on to practice, showing in detail how to start scraping and how to continue the process. Our surface is already a bit scraped, but here, as you can see, Dima went at it with thick, bold strokes. This demonstrates a different approach.
We think it's not suitable. I will show you, but just like Shibanov, well, how exactly do you do it? How do you start correctly? Doesn't matter who did it before, whether it's been milled, scraped, or done by someone else. I'm going to keep scraping it myself, just as I always have. So I take the scraper in my hand, and honestly, if you can't see well, I highly recommend doing it like this. You cover the entire surface with a thin, even layer of paint so you can clearly see where you're making your strokes, and so you don't accidentally miss any spots or areas. This way, every movement is visible, and you can be sure that your work is thorough and complete.
Start from any corner? Yes.
It doesn't really matter. I just need to start the whole thing in the same rhythm that I'll actually be scraping with later, and then wipe it off, right now.
In this case, you
pull it toward yourself.
with a big scraper.
Yes, with a big scraper, toward myself. I have even all these strokes are skipped. You don't need to place them exactly one on top of the other. You should place them next to each other. Try to make it so that the center of each stroke is a little distance away from the center of the next stroke, with a small gap between them. I'm doing this on purpose. You can do it tightly like this, but you won't gain anything from it. It's strange why the strokes show through like this, because at the bottom of the block, the scraper can't dive in there, can't reach that depth.
And these are ones...
Yes, because with such a very small radius, it actually simply just can't really go in there, in fact.
Now it will straighten out on
some paths, of course, but it will gradually start to correct itself over time, but for now, we'll accept it as it is. I can really feel it with my hands, actually. Next, be sure to turn it. You absolutely have to do this, and always remember that.
We based it, right?
We based it, yes, and in the same way, I'll use the roller to apply the pink paint back on so that
we can see it.
And we carefully keep the step as we move forward. And now we go crisscross just like before. However, it's still not catching at all. That's actually because it's even crunching and scraping right there on the scraper itself. Yeah, it takes a long time to set it right. Not a very good surface. Well, it doesn't matter. Ideally, you want your scraper not to crunch at all. You can change the angles, the sharpening, and so on, so it doesn't transfer to the workpiece, so that no cross scratches are created. If I tilt my scraper too much, for example, if I tilt it from a greater distance and then start scraping, the force that is applied will change. However, for instance, it might not want to jump at all anymore. If you show me that you can scrape, just stand right over it. Position yourself directly above it and then scrape. With this sharpening angle, it might start to jump. You can stand differently, change the angle, and scraping will still happen, but the scraper definitely won't jump. That's why recommendations about sharpening angles are kind of subjective. It depends on what's comfortable for you, how you start scraping, the length of the scraper. All of that affects the angle. Just so it's comfortable for you, try different angles at your own pace, and you'll understand at what point it feels good to gently and carefully scrape. This way, it doesn't cause pain or humiliation. By the way, this is actually a cheap rough and finishing stone. At the same time, on it I'll flip it over and finish with the fine side.
So we've really plowed it up. The surface? To create, not meaning like before, like deep scraping, like from a milling machine, it will be the same. And how does it feel?
It'll still be a little bit rough. Well, right now, at this very moment, I put on a pretty thick and substantial layer of paint. Let's see. Let's see what happens. It's actually quite suitable for rough, broad work. I see some distinct, noticeable spots, but I'm not worried at all. And
what's next?
I turn it back to 45 degrees and then continue moving forward. But the most important thing right now, at this very beginning stage, is to make sure to keep exactly the same rhythm I used when scraping. I was scraping with about this kind of step, sometimes going across. And with that same rhythm, I'm going to go along the edges now. It's just more convenient for me.
So you're basically hitting the same spots, right? More or less.
Exactly. And you really shouldn't try to scrape off all the big spots. You should break them up into several smaller ones so that in the next pass or two, they turn into small spots. The rhythm is important because after 5 to 7 passes, the spots will start to appear where you're scraping in the same rhythm as is comfortable for you so you can just go like this, ping, 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 without even looking at them. Well, I missed one spot there. Well, here in the middle, I'll go over it as well. I don't see any point in agonizing over it too much.
So now, again, we do the cross pattern boldly.
But again, as we have done before in previous steps, we will be turning it once more to continue the process. While I'm working on it, I do a rough pass first, then a finishing pass.
So how many hours in a row can you scrape a surface plate without stopping? Well,
yeah, how do I put it? It's a matter of habit. It's a monotonous task. For example, on our boring machine guideway, I can show you. There, just one pass along the guideway, pulling towards yourself takes almost an hour. So in a day, considering you have to set things down, wipe something, maybe put something in the wrong place, you get about 5 to 7 passes. And I end up sweating buckets, for example. But Sasha, when he scrapes, he's fine with it. He's much more used to it than I am, since I actually haven't really done any web scraping, in fact, in quite a long time, but... My own. We're not increasing at this time.
It grows, but somehow it doesn't actually group together.
It groups together over time, and in the end, we'll finish them all now, at the same steady pace I've been carefully and consistently scraping them, just as before. With this step, I allowed them to appear. The only truly important thing at the very beginning is to start with scraping. If you want to suffer less later, then begin exactly as the book says, following the instructions. Eliminating the traces of previous processing. And then the spots. In the end, when there are a ton of them, like 20 or so, you'll be able to thoroughly and easily scrape with these kinds of movements without needing to look at every single spot. Here, I go over it. I see it's a bit thick. Like this, for example. You might see something like this.
Yeah. And how many passes does it need?
Well, I think after 6 or 7 passes, it'll already be not quite like a rough finish anymore. But by the first class of accuracy, I think I could reasonably rate it as meeting that standard, at least in my opinion.
And the Japanese have that too, you see, but then the layer ends up being thick really thick, actually very thick, so we'll need to make it thinner. Yeah, you know. Yeah, here there were a lot of spots. As you can see, I actually removed them. They're gone now.
Yeah. And then it just really took off. It started to gradually rise, mainly because we began digging out those pits that were right next to them, so those pits eventually disappeared. What about the Japanese again?
Do they have some kind of their own advanced mega scraping methods or techniques?
There's a great video on YouTube where the Japanese make surface plates out of cast iron and they scrape from the hip. I did it that way too. It's more or less quite similar. When you use a long scraper, you move your hip slightly away and make a motion so that it gently lifts off. And you push, you lean your body into it a bit more, and because of that, it gives you some extra force. It's convenient, but then you have to pick a really odd height. And for example, on a bedway machine, it's not always such a flat surface. Nice and open. Sometimes there's a wall here and you just can't get to it. It's convenient to scrape plates. You can make yourself a wide plate
And push into it.
and you use your body weight to push. It's really comfortable for you.
But with steel, you actually have to put in more effort.
It's more of a hassle to hit the right angle in the right position, isn't it? And yeah, to take off a shaving like this from steel, well, about 5 times. You have to press harder. It's not that much more labor intensive, but the edges will dull more often, so you'll have to keep running to sharpen it. It'll just take longer, about 3 times as long. There's really no significant difference. You'll have to clean the stone because, well, I'll explain now how to clean the stone. Cleaning a stone, any oil stone, is actually pretty simple. To me, it's so obvious that I never even mentioned it. You can use a solvent. Here is a clogged, heavily clogged stone that we've just used. Or WD-40. On any piece of metal that's more or less flat, well, let's put it this way, not on a rough surface, and the stone becomes clean. Well, there are still some embedded bits of aluminum left, as long as they don't bother you, but ideally you should pick them out too. Or you can clean it again in a degreasing bath. May I please have one more? I have really enjoyed what I have received so far, and having an additional one would make me even happier. Thank you very much for your kindness.
Time, let's go
Over this.
and show how far we've gotten. Otherwise, this will turn into one of those oddly satisfying videos. Listen, the layer is a bit thick.
It's a bit thick.
It's a bit thick. Needs to be thinner. Don't you make some kind of special paint by any chance for scraping?
I make BX, I make scraping paint. It's the same color. It's a slightly different shade, but it's crazy expensive. I didn't notice any difference. I had a whole can of it, but I gave it to a good friend. The color is exactly the same. The illusion is exactly the same. And
Now next, let us continue. Let us move forward.
it's an iterative process. I turn it, no, still not right. I turn this thing definitely, you know. But now actually it's a bit too thin to work well, by the way. So I can show it to you on the white one now, just to make it clearer.
Come on, let's go over it now, right now, and then 5.
There will be almost nothing. You can do it on white, like 25. And here we'll always see the solid contact. Well, it's already getting hard for me. I need to set the light from a different angle to see it. It's visible, but it's already kind of dull, unpleasant, uncomfortable. I wouldn't come in the rain. It's not comfortable from this angle.
This angle will give it. Yeah, from here it's fine.
The light on you is visible. It falls differently. You can see it on you. There's a light source. You start jumping around, setting up the lamp. The separate external one from here, it lit up from there at convenient angles.
Well, go ahead, through the mud. You got some on you.
Go ahead, carefully move through the mud, then use the roller and gently wipe it off with the roller. Take your time.
Here, right here you have this. Yeah, like somewhere, I guess.
I would, and I'll just roll it out right here. I should have enough. It'll even be too much for us. And in theory, you remove the white part and it lasts you the whole day. It gets itself dirty, you keep smearing it with mud. It's even a bit greasy. We're just gonna see a lot right now. With a thick layer, it sticks to the tile, and it smears a lot of extra stuff right next to itself. And I wiped this one. You can't see the shine anymore.
But you can easily see the texture.
It does not affect the texture at all. Always make sure to carefully check with your hand. With your hand, you can actually feel even a few hundredths very easily, without any difficulty.
To make sure there's no dirt left?
Yes, because of dust particles, grains of sand, well, I take a bit longer to get rid of them. But on this surface, I can very clearly see the spots where I need to scrape.
Right here, there's a little dip, and here are some spots. It's much easier to see them at a certain point. It's even better than on the pink one, actually.
With the pink one, when it gets thin, it's really hard to make out the details. You have to really squint, think about how to position the light, but here you don't need to think. I can see exactly where I need to scrape. Basically, this big spot here, it's going to keep spreading further. So you try to break this spot up into smaller ones, okay? Here it's really strong. These black spots are really intense, so you really try to scrape them off.
Specifically black, but it's actually inverted. Black here is actually the shine. It's the shine of the metal. Yeah, it's a really interesting detail. I've never seen anything like it before.
But people write about the Oblispa kerosene, that you're supposed to rub the surfaces with kerosene. Basically, this is actually the best method. I couldn't find anything better for the shine. I just stumbled upon it by accident while trying out different paints, trying to get 45 spots per inch.
But why do you even need that?
Well, it was just out of academic interest, really. I don't want to do it anymore. It takes an insanely long time. The small scraper was partly made for that.
So what did you use as a template? A steel bar?
The guideways of a cylindrical grinding machine. Well,
let's take a look for a moment and then we'll wrap up. Otherwise my hand... I don't know about you, but my hand is tired from filming.
The fighter's hand is tired from striking. Tiny speck of dust, I think. No, something small seems to have landed right here.
Well, now there's more of it.
It was a speck of dust. So now they're moving toward the center. These spots are shifting over here, and then you start scraping. And there are still traces left, these deep ones. See, these kinds of
strange ones. This is what we showed as an example of what not to do, and we still haven't removed them. These are the kinds of streaks that, if you can see, go like this.
Here's one streak, here, here, and here. So these are the marks left by that deep scraping, which, let's put it this way, you can't really call it actually wrong. It does slightly meet the standard. But when you think about why it's done and why it turns out this way, it's not good. That's why I don't recommend doing it that way. And it's better to scrape properly. Understanding why you're doing it.
Well, folks, I hope everything is clear. Feel free to ask questions. Mikhail will be happy to answer. What else do I want to say? So, in the next lesson, will you show scraping with an angle grinder on a surface plate?
No, in the next lesson, I want to show different types of scraping, what results you get on a sample, so you can see visually how different scraping methods produce different patterns. I'll show you these different patterns, and by looking, you can tell whether it's a defect or not and how it was done.
You'll watch Prepare?
Yeah, and just show it? Yes. I'll just shoot some short clips like every 5 seconds to show how it's done. And I'll show scraping with an angle grinder too, but I'll figure out where to do it on cast iron. Maybe I'll scrape something small, like a longitudinal part of a lathe, something like that, yeah. So that it's actually useful. And I'll talk about the nuances of scraping with an angle grinder.
Alright, sounds good. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Ask your questions and we'll continue. Subscribe to the channel and give it a like. All the best.